Hey, moms. My name is Lucy Quigley, host of the Rollercoaster of Midlife podcast. And I want to start by asking you a question. Do you know who you are beyond the labels of wife and mom? It was not having an answer to this question is what led to my midlife crisis. Now, that's the common term that's used, but I don't like it because it doesn't really convey what it feels like or share that this is an opportunity. I prefer to call it a midlife meltdown because it is a chance to create something new from what was. My midlife meltdown hit me at 44, and that was about 6 years ago. We were getting our oldest ready to go to university out of town. And I still remember sitting at his high school graduation, dozens of families packed into the auditorium, and me sitting beside my husband with tears just streaming down my face. And it felt like my heart was being ripped into a million pieces. I looked around, all the other moms, they looked fine. But I couldn't help but think that I was losing my mind, and I felt completely alone. It was later that summer that I spiraled even further down until one day I realized that I'd hit a fork in the road. I could stay where I was and lose all sense of myself, or I could find the courage to forge a new path. I thought about my husband and kids and all that we had together. And I just knew I had to find my way back. I wasn't exactly sure what the path forward looked like. I just knew that I had to find my way. And something told me that it wasn't going to be easy, but it would be worth it. I was so lost that eventually I surrendered. I begged the universe to please, please just give me one thing that I could do to help find my way back. And for the first time in a very, very long time, I let my thoughts wander and dream about who I could be, who I wanted to be. I even dared to ask what was possible. With a few vague ideas, I began to create a vision of my future self. I explored questions like, who was she? How did she think? How did she spend her time? I'd always dreamed of ditching the 9 to 5, but what would that look like? What would I even do? How was any of this possible? To answer those questions, I had to dive even deeper. I had to explore who I was now because the me of that day wasn't the same me as 20 years ago. I had to look at what I wanted for my future beyond being a wife and mom. That day that I reached a fork in the road, I began with small baby steps. I embraced a tender and caring attitude towards myself because I recognized that the path forward requires self compassion and understanding of my current situation. I kept working at things and eventually started thriving and becoming that badass that I knew that I always was. I accomplished this because I developed a journaling practice centered around what I now call why formations. And these are basically affirmations that align with the vision of my future self, and they're deeply connected to my personal whys. Now, if you look at it, many of us moms move from daughter to wife to mother in just a few years. And as mothers, we poured ourselves into our children. We mistakenly thought that every minute had to be dedicated to our children because anything else would be selfish. But it was in doing so that we began to lose sight of who we are. That's what happened to me. And that's why when I realized that the very identity that I'd built every bit of my existence around, when I saw that changing, I realized that I didn't know who I was. I didn't know who Lucy was. This happened to me at 44, and it can hit mothers at any point. It is sadly way too common for women to find themselves in this position. Now, when I said earlier that I hit a fork in the road, that fork for me was contemplating tapping out. And no woman should ever find herself in that position. And that is why I share my story. And I am now working to help women so that they never find themselves in that position. And if they do, so that they know they are not alone, they are not crazy, and there is a way back. When I look back at everything that I did to find my way and become that person that I always knew I was, it involved three things: finding the gaps, connecting with my passion and purpose, and then tying it all to my why. Finding the gaps meant that I had to take a hard look at things. I had to look at what was working and what wasn't working. I also had to own my own shit. I was working through everything. I'd come to realize that I'd spent a lot of the previous few months looking for answers outside of myself and blaming other people for all of my problems. I want to take a minute here just to acknowledge the weight that today's mom has on her shoulders. We're trying to live up to an unrealistic expectation. I recently heard the term pintastic mom. You know how we all scan through Pinterest and put crazy ass expectations on ourselves when it comes to everything from home organization, holidays, family meals. No, let's not even forget the other forms of social media where we see everyone's picture perfect family photos, not seeing the stress and the chaos that went on just before that picture was taken. Or what about those HGTV quality home renos that are so proudly displayed, not knowing that perhaps they now have a mountain of debt to pay off? We only see a snippet of time without seeing the whole picture. Just look at the advertising industry. It has always falsely portrayed women and mothers. And now they've all but canceled the midlife woman. We are women with careers being judged for leaving our kids. We're stay-at-home moms being judged for not working. We're the schedule keepers for the family, planners of all birthday parties and holidays. We try our best to keep the house tidy, the fridge full, and we meal prep and cook a couple of dozen meals a week. We have to be everything to everybody. And yet, we still have that little voice in our head, the itty bitty shitty committee, who keeps shooting all over ourselves. That voice telling us what we should be doing if we dare steal a couple of moments to ourselves. Is it any wonder we can lose sight of who we are? But here's the thing. At some point, we do have to make time for ourselves, because how can we be there for our families if we're not taking care of ourselves first? Finding the gap for many moms means realizing that they're not taking the time that they need. Yeah, it's tough. Our days are not our own. But it's even tougher when you're a hot mess because you never took that time. Or if you did, that shitty committee kept telling you that you should be doing something else. We're living in a culture of instant and on demand. And we want that easy way. We want someone to give us the answers. One of the biggest lessons that I've had to learn is that this life, this is a journey, not a race to the end. And the same is true when it comes to connecting your passions and your purpose. Your passions are deeply meaningful values, and those activities that light us up. It's those things that when we're doing them, Time just seems to dissolve. We feel peaceful and happy and content. They're deeply personal and are a journey of exploration in themselves. Now, some people have obvious natural born talents that are their passions. I come from a family of artists, as is my husband and oldest son. And being creative is part of who they are, and they can easily tap into this passion. It wasn't so easy and obvious for me. So I had to be willing to try different things. Here's a funny thing. When I was in school, I was that kid who it didn't make a difference where they sat. I'd talk to anybody and everybody. And the teachers, they'd always try and put me at the front of the class in the hopes that I'd keep quiet, but it never worked. Not one teacher ever suggested finding a way for me to use my voice in other ways. It wasn't until I bought a Yeti mic and decided to try the world of podcasting did I realize how much I enjoyed connecting in meaningful conversation. I've been podcasting for over 5 years and now have over 300 episodes. And no, I don't directly make money from podcasting, but I'm okay with it because it is my passion and it has led me to connecting with amazing people. It has also opened new doors and helped connect me with other new passions. And it happened because I was willing to explore something new and remain open to possibilities. Purpose is also driven through self-exploration. Yet, some people go searching for it like it's a destination on a map. For me, I would say that purpose starts with taking a 30,000-foot look at things. You may see the big picture, but the details are a little bit hazy. I recently saw a stat that said that only 25% of adults are connected to their purpose. There's a few things that you can do to help connect with your purpose. And the first is to always maintain a growth mindset and to continuously be working on a better version of yourself. Now, this isn't about comparing yourself to anybody else's journey, but rather working on being a better version of who you were yesterday. Things like gratitude, giving back, finding your community, your tribe, and journaling, they're all great ways to reveal your purpose. There are a lot of people that take their pain and turn it into their purpose. I've taken my journey from being hot mess in midlife to becoming the badass that I am today, and I'm sharing it. I've taken my mess and turned it into my message. Your passion is your mission in life. And my mission is to help midlife moms embrace this chaotic time and use it to fuel their journey of self-discovery, turning their midlife meltdowns into their missions. If you really, really want to supercharge your passion and your purpose, then this is where you tie it into your why. Your why is what makes you truly tick. Now, Simon Sinek has a fantastic TED Talk about the importance of knowing your why. He believes that knowing your why is the secret to a meaningful life. It's not about the what or the how, but the driving force that keeps you going when the tough gets going. When you discover your why, you'll unlock a world of inspiration, purpose, and unstoppable motivation. Earlier, I mentioned the journaling practice that I created in my why formations. These are just 5 simple statements that I start my journaling practice with, and I write them out each morning. When I was creating that vision of my future self, I wrote down these 5 simple points about that person and who it was, and then tied each one to my personal why. So one of my why formations is this: I have a strong and healthy body and I am living a long, fulfilling life. In this simple statement, it speaks to how I value my health. It helps me guide what I choose to eat and choosing to how I move my body and connecting mind, body, and soul. My why is the desire to live a long life, free of pain, disease, and limitations. Why formations? They help guide me in my decision making. And in a sense, they guide me to be that future person today. Why formations? They're not necessarily about specific goals, more like a way of being and why. So I've been writing these same statements every morning for 6 years, and they've completely transformed my life. I've always known that there was a fact-based reason why my why formations were the source of transformation and my continued success. I just didn't have a clue why until I recently listened to an episode of Mel Robbins' podcast. It was called A Toolkit for Creating the Perfect Morning Routine, and it was released on February 13th, 2023. And if you go to this episode at about the 3-minute mark, Mel talks about behavioral activation therapy, which is the concept that if you want to change, if you want to be a better version of you, then start acting like the person that you want to be in the future. You do it now in your day-to-day life because these actions, they are what will turn you into your future self. I know it's a little bit of a chicken or the egg syndrome, but trust me, it works. Whether you're admitting it to yourself or not, you also have a vision of your future self. You're living that dream life. You're centered, you're calm. You have meaningful relationships. Your days are fulfilling and your heart is full because you're connected with your passions and purpose, and your whys are driving you. When I go back to the me standing at that fork in the road, as I often do, she would never have believed that this is where I would be, that she was capable of massive transformation and forging a path to her wildest dreams. Now, I don't want to get too woo on you here, but what happened to me that day, it was greater than me. Something, someone was there guiding me to my new path. Maybe it was the me of today just reaching back to her. As I wrap up, I want to ask 2 things of you. First, head over to my website, therollercoasterpodcast.com, and click on the Start Here tab. I put together an audio program. I call it 3 Steps to Go from Hot Mess to Badass and Start Rocking Midlife. In this transformative program, I share more about my 3 steps: finding the gaps, passion and purpose, and knowing your why. Now, if you're wondering if you're in midlife, well, if you're anywhere from 35 to 60, you are considered to be midlife. Even if you're younger than 35, then definitely get it so that you can hopefully avoid some of the mistakes that I have made. The second is that I'd like you to find me on Instagram. My handle is _roller_coaster_podcast. I want you to send me a DM. I'd like you to share what has resonated most with you about my story. I'm putting together an exclusive audio recording sharing the big 3 lessons that I've learned over the last 6 years. Now, I want you to also know I work solo. I don't have an assistant filtering my messages. So when you DM me, when you email me, you're chatting directly with me. So if you do this, I'm going to send you as another gift that special recording. I started off today by asking you if you knew who you were beyond wife and mom. And my hope that is in sharing my story and my journey, that if you didn't have an answer to that question, you've been inspired to start your journey. It is a wild and crazy ride that I invite you to join me on.